Jon Morosi wakes up early in the morning with us to talk about the return of baseball here in the Geico Outkick studios. John, I was all excited, and then in hour one, Frank Isola told me that it's supposed to rain, which is somehow perfect. All this stuff, Major League Baseball only has 2 games going on. We got the Nationals supposedly going to host the Yankees tonight, and boom, it looks like there may actually be a rainout. Are you hearing the same thing?
Well, Clay, in 2020, I suppose nothing should surprise us. Let's hope that's not the case. Let's hope there is not rain, at least for the Dodgers and Giants. I've been thinking about our friend Danny G all throughout this time and wanting to make sure that Mookie Betts played at least 1 game for the Dodgers, and now he's going to get 13 years worth of games. So a pretty remarkable set of circumstances there for the Dodgers. But let's hope the forecast improves there in our nation's capital.
All right, so what are you hearing as Major League Baseball comes back? It appears that the number of positive tests has been incredibly low, that after all of the ridiculousness about when baseball was going to come back and start, and I'm going to get to the Blue Jays here in a minute, but that otherwise things seem to be going pretty well with 2 games scheduled for tonight and then basically everybody else coming roaring back tomorrow. That seems like I would think that Major League Baseball, whether you're an owner or a player, you would have to be sitting back and saying, okay, things seem to be going pretty well right now.
You're right. We heard Mike Trout come out last night and say that he is going to play after initially expressing some misgivings about the plan and playing the sport during the pandemic. You certainly have seen the last week or so the positive test rate for the Tier 1 individuals, so the players and the close staff, was less than 0.1% of all tests that were taken. That's remarkable. That is a tremendous achievement. Obviously, it's a lower rate than what you're seeing in society at large right now, and that is something baseball can be very proud of. In fact, Rhys Hoskins, the Phillies, was on a virtual roundtable this week with Pennsylvania Senator Pat Toomey, and the senator asked Rhys Hoskins about how things are going, and Rhys's response was simply, "So far, so good, Senator." It was a very good answer, and then he went on to explain that initially he was concerned, and there was reason for concern when you consider that there were some delays in testing, especially during that first week where results weren't getting reported back on time, and there were some concerns by the players in the overall testing infrastructure. But those concerns have by and large been addressed, and Rhys said now he feels pretty confident that we're going to be able to not just start the season but finish it, which is great. Really, Clay, from a practical standpoint, it's a 2-month window to make sure that all 30 teams can play the games they need to play, and then once you get to the playoffs, you could probably be a little more flexible from geography, and if you have to get to one particular location or two, maybe then you could have a similar bubble situation to what you've seen with the NBA and the NHL. But I think overall things have started out about as well as you could possibly expect in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic.
What are we hearing about the potential expansion of the playoffs, which I think is, again, a sign that things are going pretty well, but in typical baseball fashion, this deal has to be signed before the first pitch? Is this real?
So the analogy I've used is that they're still putting the wheels on the plane as it takes off.
Yeah.
Is sort of what's happening right now with baseball. We'll see what can transpire during the course of the day. The report came yesterday from John Heyman about the conversations continuing, and it's both surprising and not surprising. Surprising in that they would try to do this close to the first pitch at a time when, to your point earlier, the Blue Jays still don't have a home. That's one major logistical thing that has to be worked on. But not surprising in that this was always, to me, one of the great slam dunks of the whole conversation, which is to expand the playoffs. When you expand the playoffs, first of all, the owners like it because it gets them more television ratings. It also gets, from the standpoint of the owners and the GMs and the managers, you get a little bit better overall security and fan contentment and overall job status if you're making the playoffs more often. And then for the players, it's twofold. Number one, you get more chances to play in the playoffs. And number two, the more postseason bids there are, and the closer the teams believe they are to making the playoffs, the more money they spend. We have seen that be the driver in team spending for years. You spend when you're close to the playoffs, and you don't when you do not perceive that your playoff chances are very high. So to me, when you consider how algorithmically driven we are in the decisions that teams make, they're now going to punch into the calculator. Hey, we got a much better odds of making the playoffs. The answer is going to be boom, sign the player, and I think it's going to be a great improvement for everybody.
It is interesting that baseball, like you said, trying to put the wheels on the plane as they get ready to take off. Speaking of that, the Blue Jays are what in the world's going to happen with the Blue Jays? I mean, it seemed like everybody was kind of resigned to the fact that they were going to play in Pittsburgh. There have been a lot of rumors about Buffalo, other areas in the vicinity of the United States, across the border, that is, from Toronto. Where is the final resting place for the Blue Jays going to be? I think the positive is their first 7 games or so are on the road, so it's not necessarily an immediate need to decide where they're going to play, but it's kind of important, kind of an important aspect.
Sure, and I think really the players are going to be able to handle the next several days on the field fine, but the concern is for their families and for not knowing where they're going to be as a family unit in the midst of a pandemic for more than 2 months, longer than that if they end up making the playoffs. It's really a difficult situation. I don't really blame MLB and the players for this. They had, obviously, the first choice was Toronto. They put together the proposal. It was rejected. Same thing, obviously, with Pennsylvania. That to me was a surprise. I didn't foresee that happening. So it's no one's fault here. It's just a matter of finding the best location. Clay, I don't know where this is going to end up. I don't think anybody really does right now. Buffalo is still a possibility. Baltimore has been reported. Jeff Passan reported on that possibility. But it's just a question of which state will approve them to come and play there at a time when the options of states that have major league facilities and are in the Eastern time zone and are not having large numbers of COVID cases right now, it's not a very robust Venn diagram of all those places. So that's what they're trying to find. Maybe it's Baltimore, maybe it's Buffalo. It's just going to be very interesting to see. I've advocated before. You think about Nashville, Charlotte, cities that have new or relatively new AAA facilities. Of course, Nashville Central Time Zone, but it's quite a riddle, Clay, for baseball to have to confront here on the very day that the season begins.
Mookie Betts and his deal. What does that say about? I mean, to me, the timing on it is interesting because there's a lot of trepidation, I would say, in general across the country, and then for the Dodgers to just come out and say, "Boom, we're going to give you a massive amount of money guaranteed over the next 12 years." To me, it's a pretty good endorsement of the overall future of baseball. Do you see it that way also?
I absolutely do, Clay. That was really my first thought yesterday, was that the number was normal seeming. If you'd signed it a year ago, you would have said, yeah, that's about what Mookie Betts should get. And great place for him to play, obviously, tremendous player in person. And you're right. I was very reassured. I felt contented and comforted that if the Los Angeles Dodgers, who are run by very smart people, are going to commit like $350 million or more to a player for more than a decade, there must be some confidence in the framework of the industry that things will eventually be something close to normal. When that happens, we don't know, but that will get there or somewhere close to it. And that to me it's a great day for baseball. It really is. It was unless you're a Red Sox fan who misses Mookie or a Giants fan who doesn't want to deal with him for the next 13 years, it was a great day for the sport. And so as someone who's just looking at it from that context, I thought it was a phenomenal day for baseball, and certainly for one of the great all-time graduates of John Overton High School in Nashville, Tennessee.
Yeah, just down the road from me. All right, question for you as a member of the baseball media who would ordinarily be covering a lot of games. What are media? What's your access like? Will you travel to games? What is the expectation for how these games would potentially be covered by the people who usually write and talk the most about baseball?
Well, great question, Clay. I'll say this. So for me, as someone who has focused nationally for a while, there is really, from what I can tell, no plan at all for there to be any in-person interviews with anybody all season. Period, full stop. It is all over Zoom. And so we have adapted. I think in that respect, I really give a lot of credit to the PR departments around the league. Every morning I get up and I've got, within the first couple hours of the day, Zoom links coming in left and right from different teams about, hey, you want to Zoom with this manager? The local media of the White Sox will be on this Zoom at this time, and you hop in and you do the interview if you want to get perspective on that team. But it's all group. Now you can see individual one-on-one setup in certain times, but by and large you're joining in these Zooms. For me, I'll this weekend, in fact, with MLB Network, where's my main full-time place, I'll be working on 2 broadcasts actually, and I'll be doing them from the stadium, but it's all driving distance. So I am now basically driving the car here in the Midwest and going place to place. I'll be in Cincinnati for the game tomorrow, and then I'll be in St. Louis for the game on Saturday. And you know me, Clay, I'm a Midwesterner here in the Big Ten. We drive everywhere, so I'm going to be driving to Cincinnati, drive to St. Louis, drive home. It's a lot of time in the car, but that's what we've got right now, and I'm really thrilled to be doing it.
What is that, to shift gear outside of baseball? You're, I believe, in Ann Arbor, right? What is the vibe in Michigan as it surrounds the university and the potential return of students and or the return of fall sports? What kind of on-the-ground vibe do you have in Ann Arbor?
I think uneasy right now, Clay, and just in terms of what it's going to be. And I think the one thing that I have discerned just from talking to people around town, and actually just last night, in fact, our local school board went online, or went with a recommendation of going online only to begin the year for the public schools here. There will be some students back on campus, but I think classes will be largely virtual, I think, to begin. I think there's an understanding, when you really look at it, that keeping a professional sports team of eventually 26 players contained and healthy and tested every second day with all the resources that you have in pro sports, that's a fundamentally different ask than an entire student population of student athletes who are living among the community. And if you're not going to be able to really quarantine them effectively and test them every second day, it really begs the question of how successful the endeavor is going to be. So I think that the NCAA has tried to do the best they can, as the schools have as well, but you're going to have to really reimagine what the entire student experience is if you're going to keep the players as safe as you can, and where they're going to live, what they're going to do, how often they're going to be tested. This is all not cheap to test people that often, and in fact, baseball has developed their own testing plan to make it possible. So I think there's a lot of unease, Clay, about how feasible football is in the fall. But so far, we're still waiting on what that 10-game Big Ten only schedule is going to look like, if in fact it happens.
All right, last question for you, Jon Morosi. Who are the Major League Baseball teams playing in the World Series?
Dodgers over the Cleveland Indians. That's my pick. The Dodgers finally win it. They finally win their first World Series since 1988. But I tell you what, a team somewhat close to you, the Cincinnati Reds, are going to be an interesting team this year. And they'll have a Nashville guy, Sonny Gray, starting opening day. I think they're going to challenge the Dodgers in a really big way. But ultimately, the Dodgers are so deep, they win, finally, their World Series against Francisco Lindor and the Cleveland Indians.
There you go. Boom. Jon Morosi, L.A., waking up early this morning. If they don't have it, send all your hate mail directly to Jon Morosi. Good stuff as always, my man. I appreciate it.
Happy opening day, Clay. Thanks for everything.
Thank you.